Okay, it looks like we have enough folks in the room right now. And we have really good turnout. This is the last session, so I'm glad folks are sticking around here. For our last session, we have Simon Woodford, who is head of collaborative systems for Bechtel. And if you haven't heard of Bechtel, well, Simon's going to fill you in, but they build some really big stuff and have some pretty cool uses of JIRA and Confluence that he'll share with us right now. With that, Simon Woodford.
Before I start, show of hands, who's in the geek crowd? How about project management or business side? Oh, thank God. Okay, good. I flew in yesterday and haven't had a chance to get caught up with the conference. So when I arrived, of course, I am well overdressed, and of course the previous session was pretty heavy on the details. So that's good. So we're gonna be covering a lot of the kind of the little higher level, little the business side. I'll touch a bit on what we're doing with Confluence and JIRA, and kind of walk you through who Bechtel is and some of the big stuff that we build, and how excited we are about moving into this Web 2.0 world, and how again excited we are with being partners with Atlassian to help make that happen. So welcome everyone. I appreciate you guys taking the time to hit this last session. All right, so let's just get started here. The challenge for our business today is to use information and our intellectual assets in a productive way as possible. So the worth of our company really depends largely on what we know and how we manage what we know, which is it sounds easy. It sounds like it's something pretty simple that we should all just get that. But for the company the size of Bechtel, and you'll see this in a few minutes as I walk you through it, this is a real big challenge for us. We have a lot of staff. We have a lot of projects. We have a lot of individual companies that make up our company. So what we know and how we repurpose and reuse that is very important to our strategic and competitive advantage. The other thing is we're not working in a technical vacuum. It's very easy to get really geeky really quickly with a lot of this stuff. And so we're trying to desperately to get above that so we can understand directionally where we'd like to be. There's so much choice, and with all due respect to some of the technology out there, there's a lot of garbage out there as well. So there's a filtering one would need to go through to make sure you're on the right track. All right, so we know that our competition hasn't got this figured out either. A lot of the big companies out there talk a good game, and they probably don't have it figured out either. So we're working through that and taking it from kind of the top down. A couple of key takeaways for all of you today. We're going to talk about how we integrate knowledge management and collaboration into our project management activities. So I'll walk you through that. I'm going to let you know a little bit about what we're doing with the semantic web and how we're attempting to semantically tie Confluence with JIRA and a few of the other products so that project content is available in a single coherent way. We're also going to look at how we're aggregating wiki content for the purpose of getting to an ultimate source of the single source of the truth. And truth probably should be in quotes there, because that can be interpreted in many different ways. You can make data do whatever you want it to do. But getting to one reliable place for that information is obviously very important for us as well. So let me just walk you through introduction again. Thanks, Bill, for putting me up on the stage there with that introduction. I'm the head of collaborative systems at Bechtel. I take care of our records management, knowledge management, and our collaborative systems for Bechtel. So it's a pretty big portfolio. We've got a number of different apps that fit in that category. And I'm also have a lot of peers that help me with defining where we're going, and a few that don't. And we'll talk a little bit about that, because that's always the challenge to bring in the innovation. And sometimes innovation comes from very different places in the organization and on the edges of the organization, if you will. So it's very important that you figure out how to leverage that as well. All right, so moving on then. Let's just talk a little bit about Bechtel and some of the things that we do. We service a number of very different, diverse business units. You can see up there on the screen. I'm not going to read through the slide. You can read that as we go through it. That photo behind there is the Kershnia gas plant out in Saudi Arabia. It's a monster facility. Those cranes that you see in the background are some of the world's largest cranes that we bring to bear on a lot of projects that we build. And you can probably see one kind of off center right a little bit in the center there. It's probably a little difficult with the screen resolution there, but they're just enormous. Those are 5-6 story towers of racks of pipe that we're using to build the facility. Just a monster project. And we do probably about 300 or 400 of these projects in any kind of cycle every couple of years and move it through. So you can imagine how challenging it is when we're dealing with not just having one giant company building one set of things from one central office. We're dealing with essentially standing up companies on a regular cycle. The example there in the background there. We're certainly trying to move into this new space. We are a company that's been around for a little while, since late 1800s, so 110 years. Bechtel's been doing the work that we do. So we have this reputation of kind of being a little stoic, and you see by the attire, I probably don't quite break out of that mold, but we are looking to move into these spaces so that we can tap into the energy and the vibrancy of many of you that might not look at Bechtel as that first place to go when you're looking for employment. So we're looking at different ways of diversifying there. So you can see right behind there, the picture there is a few of our engineers that make up our, we call them the next gen. They're nuclear engineers within some of our new power lines. And I'll talk a little bit about that side of the business. We also are, as you can see by the slide too, we're in many different companies across the planet. So again, those makes it very difficult to tie all these systems back around together. All right, let's just go through a few of the, again, here's another example of a few of the projects we have going on this year, and those kind of ebb and flow from year to year. But generally, we're kind of in that same place. A lot of projects in probably the most obnoxious and isolated places that you can imagine. Normally, people don't want us to build power plants in the middle of downtown. We don't put mining facilities in the middle of London. They're out there in the very obnoxious places. So we are challenged not just with resources, but also the geography as well. All right. So before we get into some of the other details, let me talk a little bit about some of the size of our company in terms of finances. Last year we did about $31 billion worth of revenue. So just a monster company that way. Now, I wish I had a big chunk of that, and we don't have very large margins. We do a lot of volume, and that money is actually a lot of money that passes through us. It's our clients' money that we use to build the facilities we do. But again, it's still a very large company. Again, very, very, very diverse. Revenue was our backlog for revenue, so the amount of work that we have that we haven't put in the ground yet. Last year was about $82.1 billion, so that tells you we've got still an awful lot of work to do. And interesting, on this graph, you can see where the recession hit us, and hit us as well. So what's interesting is that we didn't take as much of a dive as we had thought we did, or thought we would. But then again, if you look at, and it's shown on the graph, but the 2010 numbers, we're not recovering quite as well as we would have hoped either. So we're still recovering, but it does take its toll. So very consistent with many other companies that are out there. Another slide on very interesting one there in the background is of course the Kuwaiti oil fires back in the 90s. We were trying to do an awful lot of work, and again in those places where many other companies really just can't get to. If you look at what happened with Hurricane Katrina, we were one of the first companies on site back in August 2005 to stand up trailers. So we put 100,000 trailers out down in Louisiana. Another big project we worked on was the Channel Tunnel, so the link between Britain and Europe. So when that particular where that customer had some trouble with the first engineering company, we came in and we helped out to make sure that project got back on track. There's those oil fires, like I said, in '91. We mobilized about 10,000 pieces of equipment for that particular event. And then way back in the day, we also worked to help clean up 3 Mile Island. We weren't part of that problem, but we were certainly there as part of the cleanup and making sure that the solution was put in place. We also so let me get a little bit into the separate business lines. This is civil. This is where we build some of the big infrastructure, airports. This is right behind there is the Albania motorway. So again, imagine how difficult that would be to stand those projects up. So we talked a little bit about Britain. So we're doing some of the tube line work there, so setting up the Jubilee line, for instance, to build rail over in London. New Doha Airport over in Qatar, which is one of the largest airports on the planet, servicing, I forget the name of the airplane, but that I think it was a 787. I can't remember it, but anyway, the airplane that requires a whole separate terminal with different infrastructure. So we're building that as well. One thing about mining and metals, another area that we're working in. Again, I mentioned that being in those obnoxious places on top of mountains over in mostly in South America. This is where we get a little bit into what Confluence was doing for us when that earthquake hit Santiago. It shut down. It was a pretty big, obviously a pretty big panic. Wasn't as huge of an impact as certainly the one in Haiti, but it did take its toll on the people in Chile. What we were able to do with Confluence is when that hit, the first application that was up, ready, and rolling to help recover, help deal with the disaster recovery for specifically for IT was Confluence, was the wiki. And it became an instrumental part of the recovery mechanism for rebuilding our office. That took a pretty severe beating through that. No lives were lost, thank God, but a lot of disruption. So within 6 hours of the earthquake hitting, Confluence was up, it was running, and it was accessible for those lucky enough to still have an internet connection through the wire over there in Santiago. So pretty kind of exciting and a very specific use case for the wiki, and obviously helped us out there with in times of need. Oil and gas, again, we build some of the largest refineries on the planet. This gets a little interesting. You can there's a refinery over in India called Jamnagar, which is now I think it's the second largest refinery. But when we were building, it was the biggest one. Let me give you a couple of metrics on what the size of this job. We're pouring 1.2 million cubic meters of concrete just for the foundations to support the refinery. We've got about 2,400 staff. There's about 1 million vendor documents. Those are the documents that arrive from different groups. And again, if you think about where the wiki comes in for the collaborative aspect of that, what we're hoping to do is bring the wiki into the middle of these projects and help us with to capture all the elements of the conversations that we're having around interfacing with our different teams. So 1 million documents on just one particular project. If you look at where we are with our record systems, we'll put down about 30 terabytes every other year into our record systems. So the stress that will have on an application that isn't ready for that kind of scale is just tremendous. So again, one of the reasons we're here with Confluence, JIRA, and the other Atlassian products is we're confident that it can handle the type of scale and the type of interaction that we need for these large jobs. On the background there, that's called our Keystone project. This is a neat one. Power, and this back into the new way we're going to be dealing with energy generation. Of course, we're involved with nuclear. We're involved with some of the other kind of, I guess, regular or when you think of power generation, you think of steam or coal and that kind of thing. This is where we're getting into some new technology. What you see behind there at the top middle screen is a boiler that's sitting on top of a scaffolding there, and those are mirrors that are around that facility, and it's generating obviously the solar power to focus the energy on that boiler to produce steam that then produces energy. And I think we're dealing with about 300 or 400 megawatts of power from one facility. So when compared to some of the bigger facilities, it's a bit smaller than most, but you can imagine the impact is quite a bit less than it would be for these regular power generations. So very interesting project in itself. Again, kind of exciting to get involved with some of the new technology. And then lastly is another area that we're involved with, which is government services. And what you see there, the picture is the Livermore Lab, Lawrence Livermore Lab. So can't talk too much about the bits because I don't know. Don't tell me some of the projects we work on our government services side. But we're dealing with some very sensitive, hypersensitive and very secret projects for the U.S. government, along with some other work that we do with more of the public stuff, like destroying the chemical weapons of the last era, or as we get involved with nuclear weapon disarmament. So those types of activities we're in the middle of as well. And again, looking for systems that are robust to be able to handle that kind of security, that kind of interaction. So that gets us into some of the challenges, and it's obviously pretty obvious. A few of them, that's geography and where we live. Some of the other ones that we deal with for issues would be around diverse resources. Obviously, we're very geographically distributed. We have very highly creative and focused project teams, so you get that little bit of these little pockets of innovation that go on, and a lot of competition between different teams, different groups, which in the past have caused us to get into some information siloing. So again, we're looking to these tools to help us bring those walls down between these different teams. One thing that we are challenged to do then is to figure out how we leverage those individuals and deal with these particular challenges. All right, so one thing we've thought about, and this is where we get a little creative within our different teams, is how do we deal then with backed up with my notes here, where we've been, and what I challenged my team with is that, okay, we're not going to do it the same way we've always done it. If we did, then we'd pick up on Microsoft, we'd go talk to EMC, we'd sit down with Oracle, we'd talk to SAP, and we'd just do it the same way we've always done it. Now we need those tools. They have a place. They're large, very large monolithic systems that do have a need in different places. But if we want to do this better, we asked ourselves, what if we could do it all over again? How would we do it? And we would use the tools we would have had before and do it all over again. We probably wouldn't. We'd use the new tools. We'd use those consumer tools that are out there in order to reinvent ourselves and do it all over again. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're having the courage to break down where we've been and chart a new course. But before we do that, though, we had to ask ourselves: is anyone out there doing it better than we might think? And we then looked into the consumer market, and you see up there on the screens 4 separate companies that we targeted that seemed to be doing it really, really well. And we couldn't figure out how the heck that YouTube, for instance, was able to do what they do and still make money. You could argue that, well, maybe they're not. Well, I think they are, and they're staying in business over the longer haul. And they're also dealing with, we see up there on the screen, 100 million video streams a day for nothing. So how do they do that? How do they do that from the infrastructure perspective? And they must be paying a fraction of the rates on their network than what we're paying. If you look at Google, we found that they've got, after sitting down with the executives of Google and figuring out what they're doing, they've got hundreds of thousands of servers that are sitting there chugging away together to build and to generate those simple queries when you guys go to Google. We wanted to know how they did it. We wanted to leverage how they did it and figure out what we could do to go through it. Then we looked at Amazon, and we found that they're virtualized their environment in a very unique way. And that was exciting because we've got big trouble with disk space and how do we leverage the storage. Then we went to Salesforce, and we had a look at how they're doing their support. And they're dealing with versions that come out, micro versions all the time. And how are they going to do that when we're struggling to get, we put 5 or 6 versions of our apps out in any one year, and it's just a monster pain in the butt to do that. So they must be doing something different. So we went through and we analyzed that, and there we go with the conclusions, and that's the wide area network in YouTube. There's the nugget of truth there that we wanted to exploit and figure out how they did it. Google with the leveraged computing and infrastructure, virtualization inside of Amazon, and support and cost and maintenance of the applications over in Salesforce. So we went out there, we analyzed it, and we figured out how they did it. And again, we come to the conclusion that we can certainly do it maybe equally as well. Looks like that's sliding off. And we looked at the situation where when it's getting worse is maybe the wrong word, but it's getting the gap is getting wider and wider between the consumer market, which all of you living in and breathing, but for on the Bechtel side, we were living on that blue line for the longest time with our enterprise systems. We figured that, well, if we're going to leverage this, then again we have to change the way that we do things and move to these different platforms. And we found then, and this is the quote from our CIO at the bottom there, nobody went to Amazon, nobody went to school to learn how to buy a book on Amazon. And it's so simple, and it's kind of obnoxious because it's a rule that if you apply it to everything you do, you pretty much got to throw away everything you've ever known about how you did it and come up with a very different model, which again, one can now argue that the systems that are out there are ready for us to make that kind of change. But again, it's a very, very difficult situation that we've put ourselves in to get there, and I think we've gone through, and this was last year, going through that exercise to figure out how to do it. And then back to another adage that's we only want a browser and an internet connection to access our systems. And again, you can imagine the stress that puts on even basic systems that come out of Microsoft or EMC, Documentum products, where they're very heavy on the client. That led us to call our new transition there. It's called PSN, the Project Services Network. This is a partnering that we're having with our customers, with our joint venture partners, which could be competitors. It may also be venturing into the software side, so partnering up with all the different individuals that are and companies that are out there, and wiring this all together in a more collaborative ring of interaction. And again, it's difficult to do when you're burdened by your software applications of the past. It does require you to separate yourselves from where you've been. So this is the opportunity that lays in front of us. All right. So before we go down that path, a couple of things that we had to think about for requirements, and this simply is we're building a knowledge-based culture within the company, and that means then we're dealing with two critical activities. One is the capture and documentation of tactic and explicit knowledge. So the whole knowledge management theme, and trying to figure out how to bring that vision into something more tangible. One can argue that's failed repeatedly over and over again. Many companies have spent millions of dollars trying to do this and have failed. What we're going to do is take this from a different approach and run through it systematically from the top, work our way down. So we got to deal with the culture, but deal with the culture in a way that's very different than the way that we would have done it, or others have tried to do it in the past. And I think the Web 2.0 models that are out there give us a bit of a direction how we might accomplish that, and based on an analysis from those leading companies we looked at before. Here's the filter, and what you see there on the screen is a series of basic statements that we use to eliminate the garbage that's out there on the web, of tools and applications that might not be ready for our type of environment. Now, there's a bit of devil in the details of some of those, but the items that are in green there are the areas that we pay focused attention to as we move through this. So things like just having a browser and an internet connection would eliminate a good portion of the tools that are out there that just don't have that capability. We want to make sure that we're 100% cloud ready. So I'll talk about the cloud in a little bit, and maybe not in a way maybe in a way that you guys would all understand. But others have picked up on it. Well, great, cloud's it's easy to say, and it's got quite a bit of press lately. But there's some definite details with deploying in cloud-based environments, and it's not necessarily what you might think. And then the no net cost increase is interesting, because we have a consistent spend in our enterprise systems at the moment. And what I wanted to do is tell my bosses, and this was actually before I knew I could 100% do it, is I didn't want to spend any more money. I wanted to spend a whole lot less. It turns out that I can do this entire uplift to Web 2.0 and the 3.0 environments for a tenth the cost that I'm spending right now on the enterprise systems that we had in the past. It is it's a ridiculous cost benefit. Now, most of that gets invested in the change, honestly, as we go through that. So let's talk a little bit about Confluence, and let's talk about Confluence, JIRA, and ZAgile. Three of the products that we've chosen to start this journey with and work our way through. So if you look at Confluence, some of the use cases that we're dealing with, primarily it's around page-centric collaboration. And I know, preaching to the converted, you guys all know about what Confluence does. In our world, though, it's just a very foreign concept to be in that world when we're dealing with, and historically, very very stoic work processes that move along. And collaboration has always been a bit of a misnomer at least in our company. We do a lot of collaboration, but no one knew enough about that they would label it that way. One could argue that we do a lot of collaboration within our document management systems as you move information from one state to the next, as you move from one body to the next. It's in a box, it's in a controlled process, but there's still the interaction. It's very structured, but it's still collaboration nonetheless. And then you move it out into a wider scope, if you will, and you might have content being created before documents move through that process. And as we get more ad hoc or less structured collaboration within the system, that's really where we feel we're going to be positioning Confluence to begin with, is in that niche. Right before you would create a Word document inside of SharePoint, or you might create it on your desktop, and you move the damn thing around in an email. Then you break the information into silos, and you get disjointed. There's no visibility to what's going on within that process. Well, Confluence has a way of getting in the middle of that and helping you to move through it. So it's very interesting, like I said, use case for collaboration. JIRA we're positioning as the and aside from the page-centric, the primary use case for Confluence. One other thing that we talked about with M&M, or Mining and Metals, with that disaster recovery, standing up pages that allow you to build that collaboration and almost like a mini community within that context of pages and sub-pages. That was viral. That didn't happen. That wasn't structured that way. That just happened from the interaction with the different teams. So what we're also seeing then is this new way that groups are using these tools in order to get through some of the challenges they may be facing on a daily basis. So it's an enabler as much as it is what we can do to set up managed process. So it's a balance there. We're certainly not looking at trying to force the process down, but there are some structured use cases, and the other would be technical publications and how we interact with our different teams, and again in that controlled way that normally would have been email and Word or Excel files. This way, it's a lot easier, and you get a much better product when you're dealing with it in this more open format. JIRA, we're looking at positioning in the first round as our issue tracking system. It's a powerful workflow engine, and it has a lot of capability there. What we've got is a use case to bring down another application called Team Track that allowed us to raise cases, and this case management and bug tracking, that kind of thing. We've used the power of the workflow to recreate the process that Team Track was running out with, and so this tool then, as we move it into positioning into Bechtel, will then grow from that. The workflow components of it and how it's structured, we're kind of excited about how we might move that into the third product there, and as we bring Agile into the mix, and figure out then how we deal with online forms, how we take the Confluence wiki templating system, map it into what you would do with JIRA for workflow, and then tie it all together inside of a Agile structure, which then semantically enables the whole product. Now, really, it's the semantic, what's called the triple store, the database that's sitting underneath Agile. That really is where we start getting into integration or interoperability opportunity, and really then it brings the Web 2.0 and 3.0 world out of this context and into the rest of the mainstream in the organization. So it becomes that nugget that we can then use to move things along. A little bit about the cloud strategy. I think I've only got a few more minutes left, so let's quickly touch on this. Looks like I'm not going to have enough time for do some demos for you, but this might be worth spending a few minutes on. What you see on the left-hand side is our project and just most of our users. These users we would have normally had inside our firewall. They would be wrapped and cloaked inside of Bechtel, and we would have authenticated and we would have given them user accounts, and we would have managed them from there. What we're going to do next is dump that whole process, and we're going to treat everybody as external. Everyone's coming in from the outside, and so then it frees you then to bring in any number of different users from any different community and not worry about managing their accounts. Come into our Identity Manager tool, which is sitting inside of our cloud environment. That cloud there is an Amazon.com cloud, where right now we've stood up all of these applications both inside on production systems, and we've compared and contrast that to dev environments and staging environments that we have in the Amazon.com cloud. And then from there, we'll then build this sense of community as we tie the tools together. So at the bottom there, you see the PSN, Project Services Network, the collaborative framework. That's where Confluence, the Wiki, and JIRA, and many of these other tools, there's about 10 or 15 of them that we targeted in order to bring into the mix. They're all living inside of that part of the block there, tied together by semantic search, and back to that triple store and how we might leverage that and break free of going to like the Googles or the Yahoos of the world and figure out with them how we might spend a couple $1 million to get indexed search and do it semantically by harvesting the triple store, by harvesting the information in the tools. iRing is a interoperability protocol built on a standard called ISO 15926. It's a way then that we can then link our cloud-based environments and our applications to, on the right-hand side there, to other organizations by using this abstraction protocol. We spent a lot of work on that. Encourage you, it's all open source, so I encourage you to go and have a look at that online. We've got a lot of very rich feedback on that, so working out really, really well. So my PSN is a iGoogle type of portal, and communities will be communities of interest or practice. That's where our social network's going to live, where we're going to have that using the social networking themes as aggregators, where you'll be able to bring the wikis and bring the blogs, bring the tools together, and socialize the information within them in a context of very much like Facebook or the Twitters out there, but not those tools. Again, they don't pass through the filter. We need to be able to harvest the data streams for our Bechtel projects and for other types of reuse, and it's very difficult when you have to do that outside. So we are, wherever we can, trying to bring the tools in, leverage what they're doing, and wrap them inside of our Amazon cloud. All right, no time for the demo, but I think I might have maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes for a couple questions. I know I ran through that pretty quick. Definitely encourage you, if you want to catch me after the session, or if you want to grab my email, and I'm more than willing to sit down with you and walk you through everything that we've done, and it's an open book. So appreciate your time. If you have questions, I'll take some questions. Thank you.
How far are you into this process? You sort of talk about going to it, or is this a plan at the moment, or have you actually started?
Yeah, it's we started this 8 months ago. We did the analysis last year for how we wanted to move to these strategies. So this is live. This is up and running. The wiki and and JIRA are already in our production system. Thank you. And they're being used by users right at the moment. The cloud-based environment, we are still working on whether or not Amazon.com has enough security. We haven't done the security assessment fully yet to see if it can run our government services work inside of that context. So the threat assessment still is outstanding, but we're pretty excited about the dev and the staging side. So we expect to be through that in probably the next couple months. Any other questions?
How are you educating your workforce to use these tools?
Well, as our CIO said, it's no one went to school to learn how to buy a book on Amazon. So the concept here is to set the tools up. We're targeting different individuals within different organizations that are kind of excited and have been waiting for this for a while, and those are becoming our advocates that are then building the process out. So we're finding that surprisingly is having a real great effect, that the viral adoption of the tool, we don't have to spend a lot of time doing the training. We will train by exception, if you will. If individuals have technical questions or concerns, then they'll come into the core and then we'll explain further. But just the use of the tools, I mean, they're pretty intuitive. We're not trying to overanalyze or over deploy. So we're letting the process kind of take care of itself.